Hi, welcome to Feeding Tampa Bay's Serve Safe Food Handler Guide for Food Banking. This course will cover the food safety requirements for Feeding Tampa Bay's program sites. Today, we will be covering why food safety is important, good personal hygiene, receiving and storing food safely, evaluating, repacking, and transporting food safely, as well as cleaning and sanitizing. First, we're going to go over why food safety is important. We will be learning how food becomes unsafe, your role in keeping food safe, understanding food allergies, and preventing food allergen contamination. Food can become unsafe through hazards from the environment. There are 3 hazards typically found in an environment: biological, physical, and chemical. Biological hazards are tiny forms of life that you can't see, taste, or smell. This includes bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. Some of these cause illness. These are called pathogens. Physical contaminants include hazards such as jewelry, glass, brittle plastics, ceramics, and bandages. And chemicals in your operation can contaminate food as well. These include cleaners, sanitizers, and pesticides. People can also make food unsafe through poor personal hygiene. This is going to be through transferring pathogens from your body to food. In this photo here, for example, the food handler is coughing or sneezing over the food. The pathogens in the food handler's nose or mouth could end up on the food. Poor personal hygiene is the #1 cause of foodborne illness outbreaks. People can make food unsafe through cross-contamination. This is going to be transferring pathogens from one surface or food to another. In the picture here, the meat has been stored above lettuce and has been allowed to drip onto it. Pathogens in the meat juices may have been transferred to the lettuce. Food can also be made unsafe through time-temperature abuse. This is letting food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. For example, in this picture, this meat is being held at room temperature. This could allow pathogens on the meat to grow and cause a foodborne illness. Poor cleaning and sanitizing can also make food unsafe by transferring pathogens from incorrectly cleaned surfaces to food. Here, the scale has not been cleaned and sanitized correctly and could transfer those pathogens to food. So what is the problem in this example? Leaving raw chicken breasts on a pallet in a loading area that is not refrigerated. Is it A, time temperature abuse, B, poor personal hygiene, C, cross-contamination, or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing? A, time temperature abuse is the correct answer. Leaving raw chicken on a pallet in an unrefrigerated loading area is a time temperature abuse that allows pathogens on the chicken to grow. If you are sneezing on food, is the problem A, time temperature abuse, B, poor personal hygiene, or C, cross-contamination, or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing? B, poor personal hygiene includes sneezing on food, as it can transfer pathogens from the body to the food. What is the problem? Keeping produce that raw meat juices have leaked on. Is it A, time temperature abuse, B, poor personal hygiene, C, cross-contamination, or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing? C, allowing meat juices to drip onto produce is cross-contamination and allows the transfer of pathogens on the meat to the produce. What is the problem here? Scraping off food from an otherwise clean food storage container. Is it A, time temperature abuse, B, poor personal hygiene, C, cross-contamination, or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing? D, poor cleaning and sanitizing. Pathogens could be transferred to food stored in the container. Your role in keeping food safe includes practicing good personal hygiene. This way, you do not transfer pathogens from your body to food. So in this photo, how is good personal hygiene being practiced? The food handler is wearing a hairnet, a beard net, single-use gloves, clean clothing, and a clean apron. These can all prevent the transfer of pathogens from his body to the food. Your role in keeping food safe also includes controlling the time and temperature of the food. Do not let food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. In this photo, how is temperature being controlled? The temperature is being checked, and the food handler is ensuring that the food is held at the correct temperature. Your role in keeping food safe includes preventing cross-contamination. Don't allow pathogens from one food to another. And don't transfer pathogens from one surface to another. So in this photo, how is cross-contamination being prevented? It's by ensuring that the ready-to-eat food is being stored above the raw food. Keeping foods such as strawberries above raw meat, seafood, and poultry can prevent the pathogens from the raw food to ready-to-eat foods. Your role in keeping food safe includes cleaning and sanitizing surfaces correctly. We want to make sure we are keeping everything clean and that we are cleaning and sanitizing anything that touches food. Now we're going to touch base on some important food allergens. We're going to talk about the 8 most common food allergens. The tiniest speck of food can make certain individuals sick. The proteins that cause reactions are called allergens, and cross-contact happens when a food containing an allergen comes in contact with another food, and this can be very dangerous for guests with food allergens. The big 8 food allergens include milk or dairy, eggs, soy, and fish such as bass, flounder, and cod, along with tree nuts such as almonds, walnuts, and pecans, peanuts, crustacean shellfish such as crab, lobster, and shrimp, and wheat. In order to prevent cross-contact, please be sure that you are cleaning and sanitizing surfaces that have come in contact with an allergen. You want to be sure you inspect food packaging for leaks or spills that can cause cross-contact. You want to wash your hands and change gloves after handling allergens and before handling allergen-free food. You want to ensure that you are storing food with allergen products separately from allergen-free products. Do not store food containing allergens above an allergen-free food. And use dedicated pallets and bins for products containing allergens. So let's apply your knowledge. Which of the food items here is a common food allergen? A, tea, or B, cod? The answer is B, cod. Fish such as cod, bass, flounder are a common food allergen. In this example, is the common food allergen A, wheat flour, or B, melons? A, wheat flour is a common food allergen. Between peanut butter and crab legs, both are food allergens. Both peanuts and crustacean shellfish such as crab, lobster, and shrimp are common food allergens. Between potatoes and mushrooms, which is the food allergen? Neither. In this example, we have tomatoes and pecan pie. Pecans in a pecan pie are a common food allergen. In this example, we have squash and eggplant. And neither of these are common food allergens. We have A, eggs, and B, ice cream in this example. And both are allergens, with eggs being their own category and products containing milk, such as ice cream, are common food allergens. So we want to prevent cross contact from spilled foods to help avoid food allergen contamination. If an item is spilled, we want to immediately isolate spilled food containing an allergen from other food products and inspect the surrounding products for contact with the spilled food. We need to be sure that we dispose of any open products in contact with the spilled food. The food may not need to be discarded if the packaging can be safely cleaned and sanitized. You also want to be sure that you clean and sanitize the area that the spill occurred in. Next, we are going to cover good personal hygiene. In this section, you will learn how and when to wash your hands, where to wash your hands, other hand care guidelines, what to wear, and other important practices. So how to wash your hands. This is important because hands can transfer pathogens to food, and hand washing is a critical step for avoiding food contamination. Hand washing should take about 20 seconds altogether. It takes approximately 20 seconds to sing Happy Birthday twice, and this can serve as a useful reference when washing your hands. The first thing you want to do is wet your hands and arms using running water as hot as you comfortably can stand. Then you want to apply soap and build up a good lather. Next, you want to scrub your hands and arms vigorously, scrubbing for at least 10 to 15 seconds, and being sure to clean under your fingernails and between your fingers. You'll be surprised by how long 10 to 15 seconds actually is. Next, you want to rinse your hands and arms thoroughly using running warm water. And then you will dry your hands and arms. Do not use any of your clothing or your apron. Use a single-use paper towel or hand dryer. The last part to washing your hands is what you do after you wash your hands. And in order to prevent recontaminating hands on dirty faucets or door handles, you want to be sure you use a paper towel to turn off the faucet and open your restroom door. So in this picture, is hand washing required? Yes. You should always wash your hands after using the restroom. In this picture, is hand washing required? Again, yes. You should always wash your hands after handling raw meat, poultry, or seafood. You should wash them before and after. In this picture, is hand washing required? Yes. We should always wash our hands after taking out the garbage. In this example, is hand washing required? Yes. You should always wash your hands after sneezing, coughing, or using a tissue. And in this picture, yes, hand washing is required. You should wash your hands after handling chemicals that can make food unsafe. Is hand washing required in this photo? Yes. You should always wash your hands after smoking. Is hand washing required here? Again, the answer is yes. You should always wash your hands before putting on gloves at the start of a new task. And in this photo, should you wash your hands? Yes. You want to be sure you wash your hands after touching anything that may contaminate them. In this photo, the food handler highlighted is just returning to the clean room after taking a break. Should they wash their hands? Yes. You should always wash your hands after leaving and returning to the food handling area. If you're using hand antiseptics, please be sure that you never use them instead of hand washing. You can use an antiseptic after washing hands. Wait for the antiseptic to dry before touching food or equipment or putting on gloves. And be sure you follow the manufacturer's directions. Is this a safe place to wash your hands? No. The individual's hands are being washed in a 3-compartment sink. She may contaminate her hands using the sink and may also contaminate the sink. You want to be sure you are washing your hands only in a designated hand washing sink. There should be specific sinks throughout the facility for this, and most of them will be labeled. Is this a safe practice? No. In this picture, dirty water is being dumped in a hand washing sink. You should not use hand washing sinks for other things. Never dump dirty water in them, never prep food in them, and never wash tools or equipment in them. Is this a safe practice? No. The hand washing sink appears to be blocked by boxes in this picture. You want to make sure your hand washing sinks are always easy to get to and are not blocked. You should never stack food, equipment, or supplies in them or in front of them. You want to make sure your hand washing sink is always stocked. A stocked sink should have hot and cold running water, liquid soap, a single-use paper towel or hand dryer, and a garbage container. If these items aren't stocked, you should always let your director or supervisor know. Do you know what's wrong with this picture? The food handler is blowing into a pair of single-use gloves to make them easier to put on, but the gloves are being put on incorrectly. To use gloves correctly, you should always only use single-use gloves when handling food, and make sure that they fit your hands. They should never be too tight or too loose, and you should never blow into them, and you should never roll them to make them easier to put on. Do you know what's wrong with this picture? The food handler is washing their gloves so that they can reuse them. You never want to rinse, wash, or reuse gloves. They are single-use gloves. But to use gloves correctly, please be sure you are washing your hands before you put them on or when you're starting a new task. You want to make sure you change your gloves as soon as they become dirty or torn. And your gloves should be changed before beginning a different task or before or after handling any food with a known food allergen. Your gloves should also be changed after handling raw meat, seafood, or poultry, and before handling any ready-to-eat food. Additionally, gloves should be changed after an interruption, such as taking a phone call. Other hand care guidelines include keeping your fingernails short and clean, and keeping as long fingernails can be hard to clean. Do you know if these hands are safe for food handling? No. These fingernails have polish on them and they are not covered in gloves. If you're handling exposed food, you should always be wearing single-use gloves if you have nail polish or false fingernails. Nail polish can hide dirt under nails and may flake off into exposed food. Are these hands safe for handling exposed food? No. The wound is only covered with a bandage. In order to cover infected wounds correctly on a hand or wrist, you should always cover them with a bandage or a finger cot that prevents fluid from leaking out, and then place a single-use glove over the cover. Wounds can contain bacteria, and to keep food safe, we need to make sure they are correctly covered. If your wound is on an arm, you want to make sure that you completely cover it with a bandage that prevents the fluid from leaking out. And if your wound is somewhere else on your body, please be sure to cover it with a dry, durable, tight-fitting bandage. Now we're going to cover a little bit about what to wear for safe food handling. Is this a safe practice? In this picture, no, this is not a safe practice. The food handler has failed to wear a hat or other hair covering. A hair covering, such as a clean hat, should always be worn when repackaging food, working in a clean room, working in areas used to clean utensils and equipment. And men with beards and mustaches should also wear a beard restraint. Whenever you're working in a clean room area, you want to make sure that you're wearing clean clothes whenever you're there. You also want to be sure to remove and throw away disposable aprons when leaving clean rooms or food handling areas. And be sure you store your personal belongings away from the food. You want to remove jewelry from hands and arms before you're handling any exposed food or when you're working in or around food handling areas. Do not wear any rings except for a plain band, bracelets including medical bracelets or watches. Jewelry can contain bacteria and other pathogens, and it can also fall off into food. So, which of the following practices are unsafe? A. Wearing a dirty shirt. B. Wearing nail polish without gloves. C. Wearing a baseball cap while packaging food. Or D. Wearing a watch. Wearing a dirty shirt is unsafe because pathogens could contaminate exposed food. Wearing nail polish without wearing single-use gloves are unsafe, as nail polish can hide dirt under nails and flake off into exposed food. And wearing watches can be unsafe when handling exposed food or when working around it. Watches, like other jewelry on the hands and arms, can contain bacteria and other pathogens, which could get onto the exposed food. Which of these practices are unsafe? A. Removing a disposable apron and putting it back on after returning to the clean room. B. Wearing a bandage on your finger under your gloves. C. Cleaning and sanitizing food scoops without wearing a hat or other hair covering. Or D. Wearing the same pants several days in a row until they get dirty. Touching an apron and removing it can contaminate it. So disposable aprons must be thrown away when you're leaving a clean room. A new apron should be put on before returning to the clean room. Cleaning and sanitizing utensils and equipment used to handle exposed food without wearing a hair covering can contaminate it. Always wear a clean hat or other hair covering when working in an area used to clean utensils and equipment. And then wearing the same pants day after day can become unsafe as they can pick up pathogens. Wear clean clothing whenever working with food. Do you know what's wrong with this picture? The food handler is drinking in a food handling area. In food handling area, we want to make sure that we are never eating, drinking, smoking, chewing gum, or chewing tobacco or on these areas. We should only be doing these in designated areas. If you are sick, it is important to tell your director or supervisor, especially if you have been diagnosed with a foodborne illness. Tell your director or supervisor if you have these symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, which is the yellowing of skin and eyes, or sore throat with a fever. Which of these symptoms must be reported to your director or supervisor? A. Vomiting. B. Jaundice. C. Sore throat with a fever. D. Being very tired. E. Diarrhea. Or F. Headache. You should let your supervisor know if you have A. Vomiting, B. Jaundice, C. Sore throat with a fever, or E. Diarrhea. Next, we are going to cover receiving and storing food safely. In this section, you will learn controlling time and temperature during receiving, inspecting food during receiving to make sure it's safe, and storing food safely. Do you know what is important about this temperature range from 135 degrees Fahrenheit to 41 degrees Fahrenheit? This is the temperature danger zone, and pathogens on food can grow in this range and cause a foodborne illness. Food temperatures must be controlled. We want to make sure we're controlling them from pickup from the donor or food bank to hand off to the client. This includes time food is spent at the warehouse on the truck and at the agency or program site. And there are several ways to control temperature and prevent what is known as a break in the cold chain. And some of this is by using different thermometers. Here are 3 common thermometers: infrared thermometers, thermocouple or other digital thermometers, and a bimetallic stemmed thermometer. What are some characteristics of an infrared thermometer? It displays temperatures instantly. It prevents cross-contamination and damage to food because it does not touch it. And it only measures surface temperatures of food and equipment. What are some of the characteristics of thermocouples and other digital thermometers? They do not need to be inserted deep into the food to get an accurate reading. They display the temperature quickly, and they may come with other probes for checking liquids and air temperature and equipment. What are some of the characteristics of bimetallic thermometers? They must be inserted in food from the tip of the thermometer stem to the dimple, which is about halfway up the stem. They require at least 15 seconds before final reading can be taken. And they can be easily calibrated at the food bank or agency. The correct way to calibrate a thermometer starts by filling a large container with crushed ice and tap water and stirring the mixture well. This will be used when calibrating a bimetallic stem thermometer. Second, you want to put the thermometer stem or probe into the ice water. And make sure that the sensing area, or the little dimple halfway up the stem, is under the water. Do not let the probe touch the container, and wait 30 seconds or until the indicator stops. At this point, you adjust the thermometer so that it reads 32 degrees Fahrenheit. To do this, you want to hold the calibration nut with a wrench or other tool and rotate the thermometer head until it reads the 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So what should you do when inspecting a delivery vehicle before unloading it? You want to check the overall condition of the vehicle. You want to make sure that there are no signs of pest in the product or the vehicle. And you want to look at the condition of the product. One of the things you should be looking for when you're inspecting a delivery vehicle is the presence of objectionable product, which can include homemade product. You should also be checking that door locks and seals are in place and functioning. You want to make sure that the truck is running at the correct temperature and that the temperature recording device is working using an infrared thermometer. If the food is not in a acceptable standard, you can reject the delivery. So if it's not meeting our standards, if it contains pests, or if it's excessively dirty, the food needs to be rejected. We should also reject any foods that have not been received at these temperatures. For refrigerated food, this is 41 degrees or lower. For frozen food, it should be frozen solid with a recommendation of 0 degrees or lower. Cut produce should be 41 degrees or lower. And whole produce can be stored at dry storage temperatures. For more information, Feeding America has produce handling guidelines. So is the following delivery safe? Let's identify each situation that may be unsafe. A, the door lock on a food delivery truck is broken. B, mice are spotted inside a food delivery truck. C, a delivery truck is transporting food at 38 degrees Fahrenheit. D, a case of home canned jelly is found inside a delivery truck. The following situations, A, B, and D, are unsafe. A broken door on a delivery vehicle can allow tampering with the delivery. Door locks should be in place and functioning on delivery vehicles. B, any signs of pests in a delivery vehicle is unsafe, and a food delivery should be rejected if the delivery containers or delivery vehicle contains pests. And D, homemade products such as home canned jelly may be unsafe and you should not receive these products. Let's identify each item that was not received at the correct temperature. Frozen meat, which was at 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Bags of lettuce cut and received at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Bags of cut melon received at 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Or milk received at 50 degrees. All of these temperatures were not correct. Frozen meat will start to thaw at 38 degrees and should be received frozen solid. Bags of cut lettuce should be received at 41 degrees or lower, like any cut produce. Again, cut melons should be at 41 degrees or lower. And the milk that was received at 50 degrees may be unsafe, as refrigerated food should be received at 41 degrees or lower unless otherwise specified by the manufacturer. So some general storage guidelines. We want to be sure we are storing refrigerated food at 41 degrees or lower, and this includes cut produce. We want to make sure that we are keeping frozen food solid, and the recommended temperature for frozen food is 0 degrees. We should also only be storing food in designated food storage areas. And this picture, has the food been stored correctly? No, it has not, as the food is being stored on the floor. A general storage guideline for food is that food should be at least 6 inches off of the floor. In this picture, has food been stored correctly? No. In this picture, the food is stored against the wall. A general storage guideline is that storing food should always be away from the wall. We want to make sure that we store ready-to-eat food above raw meat, seafood, and poultry, and we should never store these items on the same shelf or pallet. You want to store food only in containers that are made for food, and you want to make sure that you are wrapping or covering food before storing it. We want to make sure that all food given to clients contains a label that includes specific information about the product. This means food should be labeled with a receiving date. This ensures that food products can be rotated correctly. This date also needs to be on a permanent location. Receiving dates should be placed on individual containers or cases or on pallets. So, what is the purpose of this date? This is a sell-by date. Is it A, used for tracking and recall? B, it tells the store how long to display the product for sale? C, the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality? Or D, the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality? B, the sell-by date tells the store how long to display the product for sale. The sell-by date is a quality date, and it tells the store how long to display the product. The product is still safe to eat past this date. So what about this date here on the can? Is it used A, for tracking and recalls? B, to tell the store how long to display the product for sale? C, is it the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality? Or D, the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality? This date is A, used for tracking and recall. It is known as a packaging or manufacturing date, and it's used again by manufacturers for tracking and recalls, but it is not an expiration date. The date on this box, what is its purpose? Is it A, used for tracking and recall? B, to tell the store how long to display the product for sale? C, the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality? Or D, the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality? The answer for this use by date as it is the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality. A use by or expiration date is the last date the product is recommended while at peak quality. The product is still safe to eat past this date. And what is the purpose of this date? The best by date. Is it A, used for tracking and recall? B, tell the store how long to display the product for sale? C, the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality? Or D, the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality? The answer is C, the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality. The best by or best if used by date is not a quality date. It tells clients the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor, and the product is still safe to eat past this date. The shelf life for refrigerated food in storage. If food has a sell-by date or no date at all following Feeding America guidelines, be sure to freeze the food and distribute the food. Freezing food will keep it safe for long periods of time, though the quality will suffer if frozen food is stored too long. Most storage date on food are not related to food safety. Here are some general guidelines. Sometimes manufacturers or government agencies will issue recalls for food. This may happen when food has been contaminated. It can also happen when food allergens have not been identified on the label. When handling a recalled food, ask your director or supervisor how to handle at your specific food bank, agency, or program site. Feeding America issues recall notices for all issued recalls from the FDA and from the USDA. In order to store food safely, we want to make sure that we are rotating food using FIFO. This is following the first expired, first out method if the food has a use by or expiration date. You want to check the use by or expiration date, store food that will expire first in front of items that will expire later, and use the food stored in front first. Similarly, you want to rotate food using FIFO, which could be first in, first out. So to rotate food, the first thing you want to do is check that delivery date. You want to store food with the earliest delivery date in front of food with the later dates. You're storing the food in front first. You want to be sure that you use the food that's stored in front first. So in this example, the date is 2014. Which storage shelves have the cans be stored correctly on? Example A or example B? The answer is example B. In this example, you can see whether the cans from June are in front of the cans from July are in front of the cans from September. In this next section, we're going to cover evaluating, repacking, and transporting food safely. Concepts you will learn include evaluating the condition of food, repackaging food, and loading and distributing food safely. Do you know which of these cans should be discarded? Both of them. Cans that have serious defects could cause a foodborne illness. So we want to discard any cans that have severe dents in can seams. We also want to discard any cans if they have deep dents in the can body, or crushed cans that are not stackable. Do you know which of these cans should be discarded? A. Any can without a label is a serious defect that could cause a foodborne illness. This is true unless the cans were donated by a food manufacturer who provided the necessary labeling information with the donation. We want to discard any cans that have missing labels, unreadable labels due to stares or taints, or no code dates. Do you know which of these cans should be discarded? Both of them. Both cans have serious defects that could cause a foodborne illness. The first can has swollen or bulging ends. And the second can has rust that cannot be wiped off. Do you know if this can should be discarded? Yes. This can has a serious defect that could cause a foodborne illness. You want to be sure you're discarding any cans that have holes or visible signs of leaking indicated by stained labels. Do you know what's wrong with this jar or bottle? It has a dented lid. The dent in the jar lid is a serious defect that could cause a foodborne illness. We want to be sure we discard any jars and bottles with the following problems: dented lids, swollen lids, or rusted lids. Do you know what is wrong with this jar, bottle? The lid is loose. We want to be sure that we're discarding any bottles or jars with the following problems: a loose lid, the button is in the lid is raised, it's a broken seal, or if it has a missing seal, unless it has an inner seal that is intact and not discolored. Do you know what is wrong with this jar? It has a missing label. We want to be sure we're discarding jars and bottles that have missing labels, unreadable labels, or no code dates. Do you know what's wrong with this jar? It has signs of leaking. Again, we're going to discard any jars or bottles with signs of leakage or a jar that is chipped or broken. This picture is a little hard to make out, but do you know what's wrong with this jar? There is mold in the jar that is a serious defect that can cause foodborne illnesses. We want to be sure we discard jars and bottles that have foreign objects or mold or have signs of dirt or mold under the lid. Do you know what's wrong with this jar or bottle? The food is discolored. We want to make sure we're discarding food that is discolored or has unusual appearances or separation. Whenever we're checking commercially packaged dry food for defects, we need to keep in mind that some dry food is packaged in a single package, such as pasta. You have the cardboard and the pasta and nothing else. Other food is double packaged with the food container in an inner package. This includes items like flour, cereal, pasta, bread, and rice. The best example here is, for me, is Pop-Tarts. You have an outer package of cardboard that the Pop-Tarts are in, and then each Pop-Tart is individually sealed. Do you know what's wrong with this package of dry food? It is unlabeled. We want to make sure we discard commercially packaged dry food that is unlabeled or not correctly labeled, has an unreadable label, or has no codes or dates. Do you know what's wrong with this package of food? It has gnaw marks. So we want to be sure we discard any food that has signs of pests. These signs can be gnaw marks, droppings, insects, whether they're dead or alive, or pin-sized holes in packaging. Do you know what's wrong with this package of dry food? Its inner package is damaged. And so we want to discard any food that has damaged, wet, or stained packaging. What's wrong with this package of dry food? It's punctured or cut. We want to make sure we're discarding any commercially packaged dry food that has a single packaged food that is exposed. This includes open packaging, ripped or torn packaging, punctured or cut packaging, and packaging split at the seams. Do you know what's wrong with this produce? We want to make sure that we are discarding any produce that has mold, decay or rot, or bad odors. Do you know what's wrong with this produce? We want to discard produce with the following problems: severe bruising, skin that is not intact. We want to watch bruises as they provide a way for pathogens to get inside of produce. Do you know what is wrong with this tomato? The skin is split. And so we want to discard any produce that has skin not intact, as this provides a way for pathogens to get inside the produce. This is a bag of cut lettuce. We covered temperatures for cut produce earlier, so if it's at 45 degrees, what is wrong with this product? It is not at the proper temperature, and so we want to discard produce that is not at 41 degrees or lower, and this produce also has no code dates. Do you know what is wrong with this produce? It is in a trash bag. We want to discard produce that is not repackaged in packaging that is safe for the food. We want to also discard any produce that has signs of insects, whether they are live insects, insect bodies, or insect eggs. And we want to be sure that we reject medications that have broken, tamper-resistant seals or damaged packaging. You should also never accept products that contain ephedrine or pseudoephedrine. Please reject any medication that is expired or past the use by date. This is specific for medication. We also want to reject medications that have the following problems: labels that are not intact or readable, and labels that do not include the necessary information. This is going to include the common name of the drug, the list of ingredients, the quantity of contents, instruction for correct use, the recommended dose, and storage requirements if there are any. Do you know which of these medications should be rejected? All of them. The first one has a broken seal. The second one is expired. And the third one has an unreadable label, so it should be rejected. I want to cover repackaging food and the requirements for a clean room. There are going to be strict conditions for repackaging food, and in general, it must be done in a designated clean room. A clean room is separate from an enclosed room. A clean room is a separate enclosed room dedicated to bulk repackaging. It must be designed to the highest standards of sanitation. It must be preventing as many environmental contaminants as possible. Interior surfaces must be durable and easy to clean. It must be built to commercial food service construction standards, and it must meet local health regulations. Temperature-controlled food should only be repacked in a clean room that can maintain a temperature of 55 degrees or lower. Do you know what is wrong with this picture? The food handler is not wearing a hat. We covered this in an earlier chapter by making sure that we practice good personal hygiene when handling food. Do you know what is wrong with this picture? The food handlers are repackaging 2 different food products at the same time, and this can be unsafe. We should only repack one type of product at a time and only handle food with equipment made for food. Do you know what's wrong with this picture? These scoops are not being stored correctly and they may become contaminated. We should store, clean, and sanitize equipment so that it doesn't become contaminated. We want to clean and sanitize this room before repackaging food. We want to clean and sanitize equipment used to repackage food both before and after use, and then when changing to a new product or between allergens. So do you know what is missing from this label on a repackaged food item? It has the name of the food, it has the quantity of the food in the package, and it has a list of each major food allergen. The label should also include the name and address of the manufacturer, packer, or distributor. It should also include the list of ingredients and sub-ingredients in descending order by weight. So when we are loading and distributing food, in order to do it safely, We need to make sure that we've prepared the delivery vehicles to protect the food from contamination. This includes making sure that we clean the insides of the vehicles at least once per week or as often as necessary. We want to make sure that our vehicles are pest-free, and we never deliver food in vehicles that are used to haul garbage. We do not bring pets with us when we are delivering food. We keep items that could contaminate food separate from the delivery. For example, oil, antifreeze, or wiper fluid. We want to make sure we lock and seal delivery vehicles when they are not being loaded or unloaded as well. In order to prepare the vehicle to keep food at same temperatures, we want to keep that food at 41 degrees or lower. So you want to check out the reading on the truck's recording device. We want to leave the refrigeration unit on and the vehicle's doors closed during an activity. We want to pre-cool refrigerated trucks prior to loading. Coolers, ice packs, and thermal blankets should be used in unrefrigerated vehicles in order to help keep food closed. Do you know what is wrong with this delivery? The food has been left outside. We never want to leave food outside and unsupervised. Do you know what is wrong with this delivery? It was left by the garbage. We do not want to put food by garbage containers. This delivery was left at room temperature. We do not leave refrigerated food or frozen food at room temperature. What is wrong with this delivery? The chemicals are loaded with food. We want to keep chemicals separate from food in order to keep the food safe. Now, whenever we're preparing food for transport, we want to make sure that we are using boxes that are sturdy, clean, and dry. We want to keep shelf-stable food in a clean, dry storage area. We want to keep food in a pest-free area as well. We want to keep our meat, poultry, and seafood separate from each other and away from other food. So do you know what is wrong with the way this food was loaded? You have raw food over ready-to-eat food. We do not store raw food over ready-to-eat food, and that raw food is going to include your raw meat, seafood, poultry, and shell eggs. Do you know what's wrong with the way this food was loaded? It has allergens stored over food. If you can see the milk crates on top of the food. We cannot store allergens over other products. So when we are loading and transporting food, we want to make sure we're keeping refrigerated food at 41 degrees or lower during transport. And if possible, we want to keep frozen food at temperatures that will keep it frozen. And so we want to keep food cold even in unrefrigerated vehicles. And ways we can do that include always keeping it covered with a thermal blanket or a cooling blanket, or by placing it in coolers with ice packs. When we're loading refrigerated and frozen food into a vehicle, we want to make sure that the air can circulate around it, and using pallet slip sheets can be helpful for this. Anytime you are transporting food in an unrefrigerated vehicle, your drive time needs to be kept to 30 minutes or less. And you want to make sure that you're checking the temperature of the refrigerated food when it reaches its destination and documenting that temperature. And that's how we're going to make sure we're loading and transporting food safely. Next, we're going to go over cleaning and sanitizing. Concepts you will learn in this section include how and when to clean and sanitize, how to manually clean and sanitize tools and utensils, handling garbage, and spotting pests. So there is going to be a difference between cleaning and sanitizing. The most important reason to clean and sanitize is going to prevent the spread of pathogens to food and is also going to help control pests such as insects and rodents. But cleaning is going to be removing the food and other dirt from a surface, whereas sanitizing is going to be reducing pathogens on a surface to a safe level. So in this example, do you know what needs to be cleaned and sanitized? A, the floors only need to be cleaned. whereas the scales used for food repackaging need to be cleaned and sanitized. All surfaces need to be cleaned and rinsed. This includes your walls and floors, your storage shelves, and your garbage containers. But any surface that touches food must be cleaned and sanitized. These can include plastic food bins, ladles, scales, prep tables in clean rooms, sorting tables, or scoops. Anything that is worn or cracked needs to be set aside and reported to management. This equipment is not easy to clean and can hold additional pathogens. So we're going to cover how to clean and sanitize surfaces. The first step is to scrape or remove food from the surface. The second step is to wash the surface. And the third step is to rinse the surface. Next, you will sanitize the surface. And then you will allow the surface to air dry. So next, we're going to put the steps for cleaning and sanitizing in the right order by placing numbers by each step. Our first step is going to be E, scraping or removing food from the surface. Next, number 2 will be B, washing the surface. D is our third step, where we will rinse the surface. A is step number 4, sanitize the surface. And C is our last step, allowing the surface to air dry. So when do we want to clean and sanitize the surface? Both before and after use. We want to clean and sanitize before we're repackaging food. We want to clean and sanitize when we're changing to a new product or between allergens. We also need to clean and sanitize food contact surfaces after 4 hours if the items have been in constant use or any time that the item has become contaminated. So which items need to be cleaned and sanitized? A, George has used the same scoop to portion cereal for an hour. B, Bob drops the scoop on the floor while using it. C, Shelly has finished repackaging produce on a prep table and will now use it to repackage cereal. And D, Maria is about to start scooping rice into smaller bags. Both Bob, Shelly, and Maria need to clean and sanitize their items. We also want to make sure that the sanitizers we are using are effective. And in order to do this, we need to make sure that the water is at the correct temperature. We also want to make sure we are using the correct amount of sanitizer. And there are test kits to check the sanitizer's strength. And then we need to make sure that we're leaving the items being sanitized in contact with the sanitizer for the correct amount of time. And this can differ depending on the sanitizer. And then we need to allow the sanitizer to air dry on the surface. So now we're going to go over how to manually clean and sanitize tools and utensils. And this is going to be done in a 3-compartment sink. The first sink you want to fill with water that is at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit and then add detergent. The second sink you want to fill with water. Be sure to leave the sink empty if items are going to be spray rinsed. And then sink number 3 you will fill with water and add the correct amount of sanitizer and checking that sanitizer's strength with a test kit. When using a 3-compartment sink, you want to first rinse, scrape, or soak the items before washing them. Then you want to wash the items in the first sink. Be sure you're using a brush, cloth, or nylon scrub to loosen the dirt. You want to change water when the suds are gone or anytime the water is dirty. Next, you will rinse the items in the second sink. You want to dip them in the water or spray rinse them. Be sure to remove any food or detergent. And again, change this water when it is dirty or full of suds. Next, you will sanitize the items in the third sink. Soak them in the sanitizer for the correct amount of time, and never rinse the items after sanitizing, as this could contaminate surfaces. And then lastly, you will air dry the items. Place them upside down to drain and do not wipe them dry. So, what is the first thing you should do when setting up a 3-compartment sink? A. Fill the sinks with water. B. Mix the sanitizing solution. C. Mix the detergent solution. Or D. Clean and sanitize the sinks. The answer is D. Clean and sanitize the sinks. So now we're going to go through and put the steps for cleaning and sanitizing items in a 3-compartment sink in order. The first step is going to be D. Rinse, scrape, or soak the items. Step 2 is E. Wash the items. Step 3 is B. Rinse the items. Step 4 is C. Sanitize the items. And finally, step 5 is going to be air dry the items. We also want to make sure we are handling garbage correctly. So, do you know what is wrong with the way this garbage was handled? It was allowed to stack up. We want to be sure that we're removing garbage as quickly as possible and that we're careful not to contaminate food or surfaces when removing garbage. Can you see how this garbage is being handled safely? The container is being cleaned. We want to make sure that we are cleaning the inside and outside of garbage containers often, but do not clean garbage containers in clean rooms or in food storage areas. They should be cleaned away from these. How is this garbage being handled safely? If you can tell, the dumpster lid is closed. You want to make sure that you close the lids on outdoor containers and that you're keeping indoor containers covered when they are not in use. We also want to make sure we cover signs of pests. Can you tell if any of these are signs of pests? They all are. A shows droppings, B shows nests, and C shows damage. Pests, such as insects and rodents, carry pathogens that can make people sick. Insect parts can even be a source of physical contamination. Please be sure that you tell a director or supervisor if you see any of the signs in this slide that are spotted. Thank you for completing our ServSafe Food Handler Guide for Food Baking class. The next step to your certification will be to complete the test. If you have any further questions, please let us know. Thank you.